But I wrote a piece, I don't know, 5 months ago, but it basically talks about the difference in how the focus is on the foundational course in entrepreneurship, but it really applies to entrepreneurship education in general. But think about if you're at a university and you're trying to educate as many students as you can about entrepreneurship, because you want them to understand its importance, how it works, its role in the economy, how to support it, versus you're trying to teach students to become entrepreneurs. And so you think of that dichotomy, it goes to the underlying learning objectives of an entrepreneurship program. So if we take Maddie as a subject A, can I ask what you studied in college, Maddie?
My graduate degree is in global affairs and management.
An undergraduate?
International business and marketing.
Yeah. So if Maddie took an entrepreneurship course and I want to make it meaningful to her, I'm going to teach her about entrepreneurship. I'm not going to teach her how to be an entrepreneur. That's not what she's ready for. It's not what she's looking for. She needs a more holistic sort of picture of, well, what is entrepreneurship and why does it matter and what role does it play, and what do we know about the sociology and psychology of entrepreneurial kind of people. And it's more like in a biology lab looking through a microscope. But I'm not trying to teach her to be an entrepreneur. I'm not going to stick her in an incubator. I'm not going to make her participate in a pitch competition. I'm not going to. So my whole point is the whole design of courses and curricula might vary depending on the extent to which you're interested in educating people about entrepreneurship versus teaching people to be entrepreneurs. So for instance, one of the core elements today of proper entrepreneurship education is a focus on the entrepreneurial mindset, what its components are, how to develop that mindset in people. Another core piece of entrepreneurship education today is a focus on entrepreneurial competencies. So competency mastery, how do I get better at opportunity recognition? How do I get better at risk mitigation? How do I get better at leveraging resources when I don't have any? How do I get better at? So if you think of a competency-based approach, or you think of a entrepreneurial mindset-centric approach to education, even those issues would be approached differently if I was trying to teach Maddie about the entrepreneurial mindset versus I'm trying to teach her how to nurture and develop that mindset. If I'm going to drill down much more on those competencies with somebody I'm trying to teach to be an entrepreneur than somebody I'm trying to teach about entrepreneurship. The whole reliance on experiential learning is going to be much greater if I'm trying to teach somebody to be an entrepreneur than if I'm trying to teach them about entrepreneurship. So I don't want to overstate the case here, but I do think it's an important argument, because I think people don't make the distinction. And so they do a little of this and they do a little of that. And especially when you have people teaching who they themselves have never had an entrepreneurship course. They themselves didn't get a PhD in entrepreneurship. And more often than not, it's some adjunct who's a successful entrepreneur. And so his or her whole bent is going to be, I can't tell you a lot about entrepreneurship, but I can tell you how to be an entrepreneur.
Well, going back to your original point, which I like very much, are we teaching them about entrepreneurship, or are we teaching them to be entrepreneurs, right? It feels to me like the students that are involved are really just wanting to learn more about entrepreneurship. But I want to understand that a little bit further. Or do you think they really do get hands-on kind of experiences that would help them in their own setting, whether it be developed world or developing world, wherever they're coming from?
Yeah, well, I'm a little biased, so I would say that up front, but I think the answer in this case is both. So I think if you're a student and you want to start a business, I think you'll learn more about how to do that through this consulting than if you spent a semester in an incubator working on your own business. And that may seem like a strong statement, but when you're working with low-income individuals, first you come to appreciate, okay, we're gonna make this thing happen, and there are no resources. There are no financial resources to work with, so we've got to be much more clever. We got to be much more creative. But secondly, students gravitate towards what they're comfortable with, and with this consulting, we force them to gravitate towards what they're not comfortable with. So if you've never created a website in your life and the entrepreneur needs a website, our message to the student is figure it out. So, and they do. I mean, we've had a lot of students create websites, create bookkeeping systems, create whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't something that was in their toolkit, or they understood before doing it. We've had a situation. We run a parallel program in South Africa called Entrepreneurship Empowerment in South Africa. I've run that for about 23 years. But in that case, we had the student. We had it's kind of a. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but we had this guy in one of the shanty towns or townships outside of Cape Town. And if you know much about those they start off frequently as squatter camps. And at one point, the government allowed the squatters in a township will have 2 million people living in shacks, but the government gave them property rights. And so this clever poverty entrepreneur starts a real estate company in the middle of the township. And he hires 4 real estate agents. I'm using that term loosely. And these real estate agents, now they have a job. And they'd stand around the coffee maker all day long. They weren't out hitting the bricks trying to make sales. So these students had to they had to provide sales training to these real estate guys, the employees of this guy's little real estate company. Nobody on that student consulting team had ever been in sales or taken a sales course, but they had to figure it out. And that stretches you, and that, I think, more helps you understand the reality of entrepreneurial life than necessarily any other kind of thing you could do. So I'm a big believer that it helps prepare you to be an entrepreneur, but that's not the motivation of many of our students. Many of our students are doing it, some because they want to do good, some because they want to learn how to be consultants. Their motives are different. And I think their motives also change once they're in the middle of it. Just from what they start to see they can get out of it.
The sure is the name for the community facing side of the business.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Inside the school, the class is called, or the course is called brainstorming to bankrolling.
Say that again.
Brain,
Brainstorming to bankrolling.
That the university allowed you to name.
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
yes, yeah, yeah. Our course is called brainstorming to bankrolling,
Yeah,
and we call it B2B.
no matter what else happens for the rest of my life, I'll know that I taught the coolest named course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised that
Yeah.
made it through the curriculum committee.
Yeah.
No, it is in the catalog, and it is called B, and students just call it B2B.
Yeah.
B2B.
Yeah.
So
No, but we also right, I hate to interrupt, but we also will get entrepreneurs that want to start, that will come in,
Yeah,
and we will admit them with a concrete business idea.
Yeah, so it's not just existing business owners. It's like, so the 3 criteria we look at for entrepreneurs, and this is not on the application. Apologies if you hear my dog and/or my baby in the background. Everyone is fine. My wife is home. They're probably watching Coco Melon or something. Okay, but the three criteria that we look at, and this is not explicitly asked in the application. We kind of do some math and figure out is, do they have a concrete business idea? Have they demonstrated commitment to that business idea? And are they from or would they serve an under-resourced community? And so if they have, and so we kind of do like a hard yes, soft no, hard no type deal on each question. And so if they already have an existing business, that's a hard yes on the first 2 questions. Obviously, they have a concrete idea and they've demonstrated commitment to it if the business is making money already. So if they are from an under-resourced community and they have an existing business, it used to be that was about 60% of our people, but as the program has grown, now it's like 100% of our people fall into that category. And then we have, like leftovers who have not got in, who we have to arbitrarily like cleave off and say, okay, well, please apply next year. You're fully qualified. We just don't have space. And Dan, I really like what you said. I'm a big fan. I'm not a traditional academic again, so I'm a big fan of kind of out there analogies. And so one of my kind of like hobby horses, like things I read about a lot is pragmatic philosophy. And it's basically like a response to, and you mean 90 seconds on this, I promise I'm going somewhere. It's basically a response to Rene Descartes, who said, I think, therefore I am. And he had this crazy radical doubt where it's like, how do I know that anything exists at all? And the pragmatic philosopher says, hey, that's totally unrealistic. Nobody wakes up and says, how do I know reality is real? Like, we need to think about philosophy as how we tackle actual problems and solve them. And that's how you kind of arrive at truth, right? And so that's what I like to think about for our business is in a lot of entrepreneur classes, entrepreneurship training programs, the idea used to be, not everyone thought the way you did or we did. They said, okay, well, now you're starting a business. Like surprise, you're going to start a business in this class, and that's not a realistic way people go about starting businesses, like people go about, they either, some people are inclined to it or some people see it through other people, and they kind of get the reps in as they watch other people solve these problems and learn that it becomes possible. And so we actually don't pitch the idea that students are going to learn to become entrepreneurs in the course, working with these entrepreneurs, but the number of students who come out on the other side and say, wow, this course really demystified entrepreneurship to me is huge, right? Because you can't really screen for the type of initiative that entrepreneurship requires, but you can really kind of even out people's risk profile by giving them the tools to validate ideas and kind of see how they can start on a smaller scale and see how to get things going the way that we do in the course. And so we have a lot of people come back and say, I may not start a business now, but since like I had one like 5 years ago who said, I don't really want to start a business yet, but since I've done this, everywhere I take my sons, I talk to them about how this idea probably came about for starting this business and ask them what kind of businesses they might start. And so we hear a lot of stories like that, or people who are like, I just left this other job last year and I like my job now, but I realize I don't do this one aspect of my previous job that I do now. And so I made like a flyer, I made like a card website, and I put something up on Gumroad, and now I'm making like another $1,500 a month consulting for something I used to do in my last job that I don't do now. And I never would have thought to do that if I had not come to the SURE program, you know? So to your point, yeah, that's exactly how it's worked out in our experience. SURE programs at other schools, and so I'm like, okay, this is the one thing, the one partnership you want to focus on first. But in reality, at SURE, we have probably a dozen integral partnerships per semester, and we've just kind of built them
Over
Oh,
time.
over time,
Yeah,
over
so-
time.
So the
And
first
it was, right.
well, the first one
And-
is definitely the community partner. Like the community partner, a community working in small business or entrepreneurship or financial literacy, just some partner with deep roots and strong ties to the community is crucial, right? And so we actually, Dr. Kumwala, this predates my time there. Dr. Kumwala actually has several of those. The first 4 instances of the program was done off campus on site with community partners, you know, and one was a church, one was a group of recently arrived immigrants who wanted to drive for Uber and needed to put together their paperwork, you know, to get financing, and taxi drivers as well, you know, and then there was 2 other like community development areas. Now it's a lot broader. We have like a few dozen of those organizations who send people to us, and we actually don't like have to keep tabs on them every semester to remind them to send people. You know, they just kind of like, it's an open door type thing where if we get a referral from a certain community
Mhm.
organization.
In South Bend, we have 15 partners.
Wow. Okay.
Many of those partners don't do anything.
Sounds like some
they're-
of our partners.
Well, they add value because their name's associated with the program, or there's some other reason that we list them as a partner. There are a few partners that are more instrumental, especially in the early days. So, you know, the challenge that we face is when you go into the African American community or the Hispanic community, but people in poverty, and there are certainly plenty of poor white people. But the challenge is universities don't have a lot of credibility with those communities. I mean, when you ask the fundamental question, what have you done for me? It tends to be, well, we have a football program that you can watch on TV, or because you'll never get into the stadium, but or we employ some of the folks from your community in the dining halls, or cutting grass, but so you have to establish or build that credibility. And so South Bend is probably the best example. I mean, I came here 3 years ago. I knew nobody in the community. And I asked on campus for a few contacts, but those weren't that good. So I simply hit the bricks and went out and met. And the trick is to figure out not who the loudest voices in the community are, but who the more influential voices in the community are. And so I'd go out and have meetings with folks that were, we call them gatekeepers, but key influencers, people in the community. Not a big number, but and I mean, I have a pretty established record, but it's not a record that means anything to them. So
Got it.
they're like, who are you? Why should we trust you? You're just here for the photo op. You won't be around 6 months from now. And so what are you doing that's different? You know, and what I would say to them was, here's my commitment. 200 new ventures in South Bend over the next 5 years, started by people from your community. And the minute I would make that pledge, the conversation would change.
"50 kilometers from Mumbai is another travel area called Nareshwari. And it's a complete contrast to the metropolitan city that Mumbai is. And this area didn't have electricity, it had no roads, infrastructure of that. And the students had gone there for a visit. And they saw some beautiful paintings on the houses. And they realized that this was Wali art, which was actually a dying art form. But these villagers were very good at that. But most of them were not practicing it because now these tribals had become farmers. And farmers, they had small plots of land where they were growing paddy. And that's a seasonal crop. And once that crop, is cultivated, then they would move out of that place to the nearby city, maybe Mumbai, as laborers. So there was a lot of migration happening. And the students went and did a market research. They found that this was an art which could be encouraged. And they found some, products that could be worked on by these artists. And so they developed a different line of products.
Yeah, right.
And that would give them, that would encourage the art and keep that art intact, saving that art form. Also, we did some research on the soil of the land and said, what else can be grown in that land? And realized that there could be jasmine cultivation. The jasmine is a flower, and Indians use a lot of flowers in temples.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was a small plot of land. We said you could grow jasmine, which is a perennial crop. So throughout the year, you get jasmine.
Mm-hmm.
And also for the women, we said that they could do a small area of the land where they could have kitchen farming. Now, for all this, the migration stopped. And education. So those classrooms were empty when these people would move out, the villagers would move out. So now the classrooms were filled, the education of the children happened. And because of all that kitchen farming, nutritious food, then there was additional income, livelihood, all of that came better. And I think over the time, the entire village changed. They got infrastructure, electricity, and because of all this, I think the additional income. So all these, the 3 Ps that we talk about, profit, the people, and the planet.